Mesopotamia is a region of Southwest Asia in the Tigris and Euphrates river system that benefited from the area's climate and geography to host the beginnings of human civilization. Its history is marked by many important inventions that changed the world, including the concept of time, math, the wheel, sailboats, maps, and writing. Mesopotamia is also defined by a changing succession of ruling bodies from different areas and cities that seized control over a period of thousands of years. Mesopotamia is located in the region now known as the Middle East, which includes parts of Southwest Asia and lands around the eastern Mediterranean Sea. It is part of the Fertile Crescent, an area also known as Cradle of Civilization, for the number of innovations that arose from the early societies in this region, which are among some of the earliest known human civilizations on Earth. The word Mesopotamia is formed from the ancient words meso, meaning between or in the middle of, and potamos, meaning river. Situated in the fertile valleys between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the region is now home to mainly modern-day Iraq and part of Turkey and Syria. Humans first settled in Mesopotamia in the Paleolithic era. By 14,000 BC, people in the region lived in small settlements with circular houses. 5,000 years later, these houses formed farming communities following the domestication of animals and the development of agriculture, most notably irrigation techniques that took advantage of the proximity of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Agricultural progress was the work of the dominant Ubaid culture, which had absorbed the Halaf culture before it. These scattered agrarian communities started in the northern part of the ancient Mesopotamian region and spread south, continuing to grow for several thousand years until forming what modern humans would recognize as cities, which were considered the work of the Sumer people. Uruk was the first of these cities, dating back to around 3200 BC. It was a mud-brick metropolis built on the riches brought from trade and conquest and featured public art, gigantic columns and temples. At its peak, it had a population of some 50,000 citizens. Sumerians are also responsible for the earliest form of written language, cuneiform, with which they kept detailed clerical records. By 3000 BC, Mesopotamia was firmly under the control of the Sumerian people. Sumer contained several decentralized city-states: Eridu, Nippur, Lagash, Uruk, Kish, and Ur. The first king of a united Sumer is recorded as Etana of Kish. It's unknown whether Etana really existed, as he and many of the rulers listed in the Sumerian king list that was developed around 2100 BC are all featured in Sumerian mythology as well. Etana was followed by Meskiagashur, the king of the city-state Uruk. A warrior named Lugalbanda took control around 2750 BC. With people cultivating plants and domesticating animals, they were able to stay in one place and form permanent villages. Eventually, those small settlements grew into early cities, where a lot of the characteristics of civilization, such as concentrations of population, monumental architecture, communication, division of labor, and different social and economic classes, developed. But the emergence and evolution of civilization in Mesopotamia also was influenced by other factors, in particular, changes in climate and the natural environment, which compelled the region's inhabitants to become more organized in order to cope. Urban societies developed independently in Lower Mesopotamia, an area in what is now southern Iraq, where the early civilization of Sumer was located, and Upper Mesopotamia, which includes northern Iraq and part of present-day western Syria. One factor that helped civilization to develop in both places was the climate of Mesopotamia, which 6,000 to 7,000 years ago was wetter than that part of the Middle East is today. The earliest cities of southern Mesopotamia developed on the margins of a great marsh that provided an abundance of natural resources for construction, reed, and food, wild game, and fish, with water easily accessible for small-scale irrigation that could be organized at a local level and did not require the supervision of large-scale state structures. The marsh provided a connection to sea routes on the Arabian Gulf, which made it possible for people who lived in the south to eventually develop long-distance trade with other places.